I think it is apt that on this Shabbat before Rosh Hashanah, this Shabbat of Selichot, the Shabbat where we focus on our prayers for repentance, hoping that we will be forgiven by other human beings and by God, that we focus on criminal justice reform this evening with two very special individuals, Gilda, Sheppard, an activist and director, particularly of Since I've Been Down, an incredible film which we had online, and we probably can hook you up again if you haven't seen it, if you're interested in seeing it after this evening. And one of the key subjects of that film, Kimonti, whose story is not only incredibly inspiring, but he really became the focus of so many within our community of our efforts to seek his release, and now he is going out in the community speaking for, advocating for, hoping to enact change for those who are still incarcerated, still the victims of a system that is unequal in its treatment and unequal in its access to true justice and repentance. I'd like to first ask Gilda Sheppard to please come forward to share some thoughts with us this evening. So many of you probably were able to see the film a couple years ago. We had a big communal discussion on this during COVID. It was online, and we all forget that period in our lives. So it's good that we're reconnecting with that again this evening. And then we are so fortunate to welcome and hear from Kimonti.
Wow, it's a different perspective from here, isn't it? How lovely. I see people that I know. Reverend Anderson, we just had a screening at Reverend Anderson's church. I met Reverend Anderson because of Rabbi Wiener. I want to give a hand to him, please. The work that he's doing to work across significant differences is extremely important so that we can see our shared humanity. And the wonderful, not new friends, but friends that I've known for a long time, Lori Cohen, I'm a professor of sociology. I worked with her. I just have to give back a little bit, right? And yes, they're standing up now. Could you please stand up? Those who organized that wonderful, come on. She's walking out the door. Then there's the one sitting next to her. Come on, stand up. You need to, yes. They organized an entire screening of our film, not just to see a film, but to act, but to do something, to understand our shared humanity, to understand the triumph of the human spirit. And I want to thank the Jewish community because you've been right there with me as I'm telling you the truth, and not just throwing money at the problem, but creating a forum so that we can speak. Not just speak about, but bring us here. I learned so much about the role of art so that people can see, as James Baldwin says, the things that they refuse to see. That's what art can do. That's what a sermon can do. And I didn't know he could play the guitar. Oh, my goodness. What? You know, we always need song and culture and those kinds of things. I taught in the prisons for 20 years. I've been knowing Kimonti for 16. Kimonti is the spine of the film. There are many Kimonti, and they are of all genders. All genders. And they're all races, and they are your children. Because if it happens to me in the morning, it can come for you in the afternoon. And it can ambush you in the night. Our shared humanity is what I learned from working in the prisons. I realized my own contradictions. Those who I thought, well, this is the first time you've been in prison. Oh, and then someone over there said, did you think that about me? What happens when a woman goes to prison? What happens to her children, their children? They usually go to the state. What happens when a man goes to prison? Sometimes the mother or the grandfather takes care of him, but that's patriarchy. We need to speak about things, but I learned about this from doing even research on within the Jewish community about the heavenly argument. The holy argument That's what I read, that what you all practice, or as part of your ethics, that you're not just fighting as antagonistic, but you're finding, once again, the shared community, our shared humanity, the sacred argument to seek heaven. That's what we've done historically with the civil rights movement, Black Lives Matter, the Me Too movement, on and on. We've done that. We've had to stand in our brave space. And for this temple, and this is not the first time, Kimonti and I did a sermon for Yom Kippur. I learned about atonement. Dare to trust me to come to the mic. Really. Rabbi Borodin, did I pronounce that correct, I think? Yeah. She had the wherewithal to step into her brave space to do that 2 years ago. I met everybody through the Multi-Faith Coalition for Restorative Justice. That's why I was reunited with the Reverend Anderson. Members of New Hope Baptist Church were there. Baha'i people, Jewish people, Muslim people, all together talking about the justice system. Seeing their connection to Kimonti Carter, who grew up in Hilltop, joined the gang when he was 11 years old, and changed in one of the worst places possible, prison. It's not because prison works, my dear friends. It's because we work, and Kimonti work like I don't know what, in the community called the Black Prisoners Caucus. Sometimes when I say that phrase, people shudder. Oh, is it a black gang or something? It is fired in the kiln of love, as you sung about today. And as I'm a professor of sociology, so I do a little research, it's I got to find out. And so I looked up Shabbat, and it talked about rest. Rest. Rest is not a privileged position. It's hard to sit back and reflect, to look at yourself really and work across significant difference, to face your contradictions. Who do you other? Who do you pull a wall up? What do you have in common? I even have notes, but I said I'm not even going to deal with this because it felt so good in here. It felt so good in here, right? And so I want to thank you so much. You can see the film on Peacock and on Amazon Prime, or you can email me at gildasheppard@gmail.com. And the Multi-Faith Coalition for Restorative Justice is working with the Black Prisoners Caucus, and I'm sure you can work with Rabbi Wiener and Muslim church temples and Baptist churches are coming together on October 29th, and Rabbi Wiener will put it in your organ that goes out or social media. We're going to have Disrupting the School to Prison Pipeline kind of symposium. We're not giving up. Practice is the criterion of truth. I can talk forever, but I'm going to stop because I really do appreciate this. I did this film because I love children. Do you know what's going on with our children? They're banning books. They're saying slavery was okay. They're throwing out the Holocaust. But they don't see us. Look at us. Look at us. We may disagree, but that's a good thing. I don't want to sing to the choir like, I want somebody to question me. I want you to question in the film where we all come together. If someone says, I dare say that the answers to today's problem can be found in prison. Whoa! That's some heavy stuff. Question that. That's where the triumph of the human spirit can really happen. Sometimes I think out here is the prison. And if we didn't have community, not to just argue with, but to disagree and see where we come together. The holy argument, the beautiful holy argument, and the importance of rest. Not as I won't look at my emails, but rest and reflection. Rest as resistance to a capitalist, productive, get up and work kind of system. Rest. That's revolutionary. I thank you so much. Watch the film Since I've Been Down. October 29th is Disrupting the School to Prison Pipeline. Thank you so much, Rabbi. I so appreciate you.
You didn't need any notes. You didn't need any notes. Thank you so much. And again, we'll put out on Facebook information about not only contributing to various organizations that you're going to hear about this evening and hear about in the film, but also about that event coming up on October 29th. Kimonti Carter, please, let us hear your testimony.
How's everybody? First and foremost, man, I just want to say that it's a pleasure to be here with you guys, in your temple, to be able to celebrate here with you guys, and to be able to, really share, not only my story, some of the things that we've been able to find ourselves involved in, but ultimately how we can build, stronger relationships in our community. For those of you guys who've been able to see the film, right, understand my story, and now be able to see me out here in the free world. These last 14 months have been life-changing. If that's a word that can kind of capture what's happened over the past 14 months. I grew up in prison as an 18-year-old kid, didn't even get a chance to graduate from high school. And so growing up in the system and learning how to be able to survive inside of an institution is a pretty difficult thing, right? They've been enslaving folks for a very long time. But when we get to thinking about the things that people do as a way of being able to convince themselves that things are going to be okay, right? In order for us to be able to confront our truths as a way of being able to really speak truth to power. Right, even when we were finding ourselves locked 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, right, we were still finding ways of being able to overcome our situations, our circumstances, because that was the power and the gift that God gave me, to be able to figure out the solutions and the obstacles in which I find myself stumbled by. And so, as a young kid who ran from education and all of the things that would ultimately be contained inside of a book, I end up coming back full circle to education in prison, because there was a lot of educators, there was a lot of people from community who was helping us to be able to recognize that in order to make an informed decision, you need to be informed. And so these challenges were the things that ultimately allowed us to be able to challenge each other. We're talking about building community. Right? And so in a community, when you have nothing, you start to think about the things that you're going to need in order for us to be successful, right? We've seen Naked and Afraid and Alone, places where folks are having to survive in circumstances and situations that isn't normal, but you're going to have to figure it out somehow. And we were found in prison to be faced with those exact same results. And so now, as laws have been changing, or courts have been changing their minds with regards to how they approach young people, community is still needed. Because now, once people are getting free, some folks are still trying to get here, some folks are trying to get taken back, right? To kind of bring you guys back up to speed, I also have a court date, September 14th, next week. When they released me on July 8th, 2022, The prosecutors also appealed that decision because they wasn't in agreement with the judge being able to have discretion. And so, like folks who's in the system, they have every right to be able to appeal and to ultimately pursue their form of justice. Fortunately enough, community, I have a wonderful attorney, but folks are being able to come up not just to support me at my hearing, but Sean Reed is also a woman who's in community, who did 32 years in prison, sentenced as a young person, who's all of a sudden finding her liberties at jeopardy, right? And so now, not only when I think about the things that are happening in our situation, young folks right now are still being locked up, sentenced, and shipped off to prisons, regardless of what the laws say. And so now, as black and brown communities come forward as a way of being able to prevent juvenile jails from being built, from being able to prevent over-policing in brown and low-income communities, we're trying to figure out how do we partner and build relationship with communities in order for us to start moving towards restorative justice principles and practices. What does that mean? That means that if this was y'all community, and when someone gets in trouble here, at what point do y'all kick them out and feed them to the system? As a community, right, hopefully the answer is never. As a community, regardless of whatever obstacles or situations y'all come from, I'm pretty sure that over time, you guys have trusted, y'all have built a strong enough process here to where, regardless of what the issues are, your community is going to be able to rally together in order to address it. Is that safe to say? Right. You know what I mean? And so now we're trying to basically say, is like, how do we begin to multiply these examples in community? Because what we do know is that when young black, brown, and young poor white folks find themselves locked up in the system, what happens is community is moved out of the way and then the system takes over. And so now when kids are growing up in institutions, when kids are being expelled from school, that's the cradle to prison pipeline. Schools are ran just like prisons, because if you don't comply in school, you're punished, right? You're kicked out of the class, that's first. That lets the child know that they're not wanted. Then you're sent to somebody's supervisor in order for them to make the decision. If your behavior was bad enough, now you're kicked out of school and now you can't come back. And so what message does this send to a young person? And what is community doing as a way of being able to prevent schools from being able to kick young folks out of the schools and into the streets where they don't belong? And so as the Black Prisoners Caucus, we realize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done in community in order for us to do healing, but we can't do it alone. We're coming to mosques and synagogues and churches and all of these things as a way of being able to connect with community to let them know that community still needs y'all. There's still a lot of work that needs to be done with regards to criminal justice reform. That's going to require bodies. That's going to require emails. That's going to be requiring us to speak to our legislature who represents our districts in order for us to be able to have conversations with them about the things that we do and we do not support in our community. And hopefully one of the things that y'all don't support here is locking young kids up and throwing them in a jail cell. It arrests their development. And so for the Black Prisoners Caucus, man, I think that, one of the things that I have come to really understand is that you can't do anything without community. You know what I mean? Community nurtures us, it guides us, it teaches us, it humbles us, and it loves us, most importantly. And so if community is the thing that we need as a way of being able to address the concerns that we have in order to nurture the self-reflection that young folks have and old folks, right? Because it isn't just young folks who are dealing with self-esteem issues. We're talking about being able to just build a community in which it holds and it supports folks and people can rely and tap into it and be able, because they know that it's there. And so I guess, as I come here and we talked about the Sabbath, right? We're talking about how we rest. They do say that self-help, self-rest, self-reflection, that's also a part of resistance. As we resist struggle, as we resist tyranny, as we resist repression, we have to be able to make sure that not only that we're prepared and we're well healed for the battle, because it's going to be a long one. And hopefully as, we continue to keep building relationships in community, we'll begin to see folks who are standing right on the front lines with us as a way for us to be able to stand up for the folks who don't have an opportunity to speak for themselves. So I don't want to waste a lot of time here, but what I do want to say, man, is thank you guys for tapping in and checking the movie out. The Black Prisoners Caucus community group is out here really trying to recruit more sponsors and volunteers. And so the wonderful things that you guys was able to see in the film, those things were only able to happen because community was going inside and was being a part of our meetings, a part of our classes, a part of our summits, and a part of our workshops. Since COVID, a lot of the stuff that was happening inside prison has been disrupted. Administrations have changed. Superintendents across the institutions are trying to implement different types of models in order for them to be able to have their own institution. But I think it's important for them to be able to see emails, letters, presence from community as a way of being able to say, we see that peer-to-peer works. We see that when prisoners are given an opportunity of being able to effectuate change amongst themselves, that progress is happening. Recidivism is lowered, so is violence. And so hopefully this is something that we continue to support. Hopefully this is something that, we can find some folks here who are definitely interested in being able to do a little bit more activism work, right? We need folks in the community. We need boots on the streets. And so hopefully after we leave here today, we'll have a wonderful group of people who is coming right here from the synagogue that is interested in being a little bit more hands-on with the restorative justice work. Again, I want to thank you guys for inviting me here. It's always a pleasure. Mr. Weiner, Rabbi Weiner, Carrie, Pastor Anderson, man, thank you guys for continuing to open up y'all's homes to me and inviting me to be able to share my experience and my story, because I think that these things are important, and hopefully we can be all on the same team as we fight for justice. So thank you guys for y'all time, and thank y'all for having me. Thank you.